What do you got, a mullet going on?
What do you think, bro? I went for it. I even got the mustache and everything, man. People out here looking at me a little. There's a little double take going on.
Yeah, dude, you look from the Midwest. Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
How's it going, dude?
It's all right, man. It's busy. The last couple of days have really been pretty busy, but it's good. It just makes you fly kind of fast. I try to find ways to slow it down a little bit.
I hear you, man. I'm battling the same stuff, dude.
I mean, and at the
There
end
we
of the
go.
day, they're good problems to have.
Yeah, yeah. I always say that. I'd rather be busy. Um, cool. You ready to get going?
I'm ready to rock, man. I know we got some questions to cover, and I know we got some feedback from the audience, so I
Yeah,
think that's going to be pretty cool.
super excited about this one.
Me too.
So guys, welcome back to this is our fourth podcast, I guess fourth of the year. Again, intake, outtake. Is that what? Oh, intake, output podcast. Um, and today we are going to be talking about some common misconceptions that people have in the gym and in the nutrition space. So I think just with the amount of questions that we got, it's clear that there are a lot of misconceptions. And I think something that leads to that, something that we've talked about before, is just that the amount of information that's out there on the internet and on social media, you want to make sure you're getting your information from credible sources, right? There's a lot of people out there who just kind of maybe talk about what worked for them. So a lot of anecdotal stuff. They're maybe not the most like qualified to speak on certain things, or aren't using like evidence-based claims in that sense. So hopefully, myself and Gary are going to be able to clear up a lot of those misconceptions for you guys. So yeah, we're kind of just gonna go back and forth here. Gary will do one about taking it from a fitness perspective, and then I will take one from a nutrition perspective. But again, I think this is going to be a really good episode. It's not just performance based here. I think this should reach like a solid amount of people. So super happy. So Gary, we're going to start with the first question for you. This one was, if you need to kind of kill yourself in the gym every day, so make sure you're getting a heavy sweat, make sure you're feeling destroyed after your workout, is that what it takes in order to, increase your performance or build muscle?
That is what it takes in particular instances, right? Or maybe a particular day or week at a time. And I'm an extremely guilty culprit of this. It took me, I shouldn't say took, it is taking me a bit to just tone down that alpha level mindset, or I don't want to say male, just male, it could be both. That kind of mindset of I constantly have to go hard. I have to be crawling on the floor to get out of here. I have to push myself to the absolute limit every single day, every single time. You can. You'll last for a while. You'll most likely hit a wall, and then
Definitely.
you'll eventually have some sort of injury, some sort of problem. Your numbers will go backwards. You'll start feeling rather shitty, rough sleep, tired, sore, irritable, etc. I love the idea. I'm a big fan of it. I love the CrossFit stuff. I love that mentality of we must be able to run through a wall,
Yeah.
but there has to be strategy behind that. The coolest ways that I've ever done it is when I did it with the kids at the colleges. We do it out here in LA. It's just a little bit different with certain clients versus others. But when I was in that college setting, I had that mapped out to certain tees for certain teams. And you would try to literally line it up in championship weeks, or you would try to line it up in the week before they go away in the summer. You want to look at times where the stress level is either very low or actually very high, in my opinion. You may hear different critics out there, and this is strictly an athletic realm. If everything's already high, let's just pour it on and see what they can do, see what they have. But keep one of these things in mind probably the most important thing to remember is after you have a week like that, day like that, period like that, it has to follow with a downfall or some sort of taper off.
Yeah.
And then it has to climb itself gradually back up, or it has to go up and down. I've said this before on here a few times. I relate it to a roller coaster. You got the hill,
Yeah.
you got your valley, you got a hill, turn, etc.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think, you mentioned CrossFit specifically, and I think that's very relevant in that space. I think a lot of people, they come in and they try and attack their workout every single day to a point where, they want to be on the floor and, dying. And does that stimulate like the, progressive overload that you need? Does that stimulate, muscle building and building capacity? Yeah, I agree with you. I think it does. But you cannot do that every day. And I think it takes a while, and it takes like an experienced athlete time to learn that, because, you have to pick and choose the days, like when you feel good, those are the days that you can push in the gym. You're not going to come into the gym and feel great every day. And on those days, maybe, it's important to trust your body. And again, the older I get, the more I really feel that way. Like if I even have a slight twinge or, something doesn't feel right, maybe I don't feel like I didn't get a chance to stretch that day, or I didn't get a chance to eat the right foods that day, right? Those are the days I back off a little bit. And I think it saves me from injury, and it saves me from, just feeling like crap in a workout, right? If you're not feeling great that day, no big deal. Just be able to kind of like come in there the next day and, attack it. But pick and choose your battles, especially as you start to age, I think, a little bit.
I mean, age is the big one. I think another one to remember too is if you want to tap out every single day, you're going to tap out, right? You're going to push yourself until you hit the floor, until you're throwing up, or until you're sweating profusely. But what does that look like, and how does that eventually feel? It all comes back to what we said. If you constantly do it over and over again, certain ones will last longer than other ones, but no matter what, at some point, you're going to hit a wall with it.
I agree. Yeah. Awesome. So again, you can still build muscle, you can still build capacity, just like succinct, just answer the question, without killing yourself in the gym every day. There's other ways to progress, there's other ways to progress working on your form, working on your technique, right? There's working on a certain type of skill, right? If you're working on a certain type of movement that you want to work on. So there's countless ways to progress that don't always entail just busting your ass every day. But it is important.
It's very, very, very important. And then one more thing I want to add, because I know I went on that little rant, but there's also the idea of working in. For example, for myself, 2 things that I do now that are very simple, take 10, 15 minutes of time, is I'll go for a walk in the sun or outside. I'm trying to include this during my workout routines. And I just take moments to do breath work, inhales, exhales, a little bit of holds, but something that is giving you energy. It's important to know that a workout is actually a release of energy, so it is stressful. We have to think about items that give us energy back. The problem is sometimes that's a little boring.
Yeah, I hear that. But yeah, no, I think that's great. Okay, cool. So rolling over to nutrition. This is one that I get all the time, and I think it's super interesting. I think people are starting to kind of come out of this a little bit, but what I have down is that fruit is bad for you because of the sugar and the fructose, okay? So I think that, the science, this kind of started in, I think, 2017, 2018. There was some literature that was coming out about how the amount of fructose in our diet, because fructose is metabolized a little bit differently than sucrose. So again, there's table sugar, which is a combination of sucrose and fructose, 2 sugars. Fructose is metabolized in the liver of the body. So it's slightly different. And people were thinking that, or the literature seemed to suggest that it was leading to some chronic diseases, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, stuff like that. So, people putting 2 and 2 together, fruit does have fructose in it. But I think there is, what happens all the time. This kind of story gets caught up by mainstream media. They're not really looking at the study and what it's saying, in a sense, and people kind of take it to the next level. So first thing I want to say is that fructose from fruit is not going to be bad for you. And the reason I preface that is because we will talk about stuff like high fructose corn syrup, which is going to be an added sugar, and it's a much higher concentration of fructose. It's going to be slightly different. But again, you want to think of fruit as it's coming in a package ready to go for you. So the fructose that you're getting from fruit, it's coming with a bunch of added fiber, right? It's coming with a bunch of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, right? So that fructose in your body, because of the fiber and other stuff, it's not going to come in and spike your blood sugar the same way as added sugars in, candy, brownies, cookies, or anything, with high fructose corn syrup will, right? So that's the first thing I'll say, is that no, fruit is not bad for you. It's a relatively minor amount of fructose that's even in fruit. Relatively low sugar fruits in general, especially like berries, they really don't have a lot of sugar at all. There are some higher sugar fruits, apples, bananas. I call those like the non-seasonal fruits, right? The stuff that you can always get at the grocery store. Those often have slightly higher fruits, but again, fruit's not bad for you. It has the fiber. It has a lot of other benefits, so don't be scared off there. The other thing, and why I found this so funny, is that people would say like, hey, I'm not going to eat fruit, because I always would advise, hey, like if someone working with me, I'd say, if you're still hungry at night, right, you can have some fruit, you can have some yogurt, something like that. And then people were like, oh no, I can't have fruit before bed, like it has all this added sugar. But then they'll have ice cream, they'll have a brownie, cookie, candy, right? So like they're saying, oh man, this fruit has all this sugar, but then they're choosing these other things. So I just always found that like really comical, something that, they get so scared over here, but then they do that way, right? It's the same thing with like artificial colors, sweeteners, all those artificial ingredients, right? They'll pick and choose, where they don't want it, right? They don't want it in certain things, but then they'll eat like Skittles, right? And think that it's not in there or something like that. So, yeah, just keep it succinct. Fruit, not bad for you. You're totally fine to eat it. There's not a significant amount of fructose. It shouldn't be anything for you to worry about, unless you have some kind of chronic liver condition. But again, at that point, you should be speaking with your kind of healthcare professional at that point.
It's a very interesting one too, Pete. And this has come up with us out here and with clients. They've actually brought up, well, this fruit has a lot of sugar and this candy bar has a lot of sugar. Aren't they metabolized the same way? And to be honest, a while ago, I actually had to make sure I was answering that question properly for a moment. I would figure out of just common sense and based on what I know, I'd be like, well, no, still eat the fruit. It comes from the ground. There's a lot of other benefits for the fruit. And I know it's kind of high in sugar, so maybe eat it earlier in the day.
Yeah.
But it has come up.
Yeah. No, I think I hear it all the time, man. It's one of the things I get all the time, but yeah, really nothing to worry about. It's great as like a pre-workout. Like I said, some of the higher sugar foods, in that sense, or the higher sugar fruits like the apple, banana, those are great pre-workout because they're going to be easily digestible. They're going to give you the energy you need through your workout. And they're not, like I said, because of the fiber and like what the package of the fruit, right? The whole fruit, it does not spike your blood sugar. It doesn't spike your insulin levels the same way that, a candy bar or more refined sugar will. So, yeah, I'd say good to go. Cool. Okay. So the next one is, because me and Gary kind of came up with a bunch of misconceptions that we have. So this one's actually, someone wrote this in as well. So this is from Chelsea McNally, who works out at my gym, CrossFit DHF. So this one is the whole myth surrounding females lifting weights, and all these ladies are super scared that if they lift weights, they're going to get too big. What do you have to say about that one?
I think first and foremost, and I want to give the man credit, he's doing great things out there. I think one person to follow beyond social media is Brett Contreras. He does put a ton of information. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
He's like the glute doctor or whatever.
The glute guy. They call him the glute guy. He primarily works with female athletes, female physique competitors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. he puts out a lot on the glutes itself and a lot of just working with women in general. And I remember this is a year or two ago. It wasn't one of his studies or one of his readings, but he talked in depth of how training and actually adding load progressively, really for a woman and also for anyone, it makes the individual smaller, more compact, leaner. I want to talk about a personal experience. I came off of bodybuilding work and I went into strength and conditioning. And the bodybuilding work, I'll tell you more about it, but it was big. It was training to get big, if you want to call it that. And I went into strength and conditioning and I basically said, well, I'm just going to get strong. That is my primary goal. I don't know what's going to happen to me, but here it goes. Through the course of that, I actually lost 25 pounds in total body weight. I went from 205 to about 180, and then I actually progressively got stronger in every single one of my lifts. Now, I'm a male. I have a fast metabolism. Both my parents, even my grandparents, are very, very lean, so I probably had that working for me. But that is one thing to think about. And when you're training, I get this a lot. It's, well, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. Is this going to make me look like a bodybuilder? And you really have to dial into the talk of, A, how much volume are we actually doing here? How many days a week? How many sets are we going to do? Are we talking reps of 15, 20? And are we doing counts of like 100, whatever, right? And then outside of that, this goes into your world. It actually comes down to the eating. You're going to be eating more. If you're literally, I remember when I played football, I was eating to gain weight. I was eating to have a surplus of calories. So what happened during that time? I gained all that weight. When I stopped doing that, the weight came off. Another very, very big one that I remembered was that I had to do this for a certification, and it talked about both males and females. It actually worked better for the males in the study, but the more protein that these individuals ate along with their weight training and resistance training, the leaner they got.
Yeah.
But beyond all that, to answer the question, in my opinion, because I've seen it happen and I've been doing it myself, you will not look like a bodybuilder. I shouldn't promise that. It might go a certain way, but you will get smaller. You will become more compact.
Yeah, I'm finding the same thing. And I think if you're just like, if you take a step back and just think about it logically, like if it was that easy to build muscle, then every dude would be walking around like jacked, right? Because like every guy would want to, like, well, I want to say every guy, but a lot of guys go to the gym and work very hard to try and get bigger, and it's not easy. So like all these women who think they're going to go to the gym and do a couple like bicep curls and think they're going to, you know, look like a physique competitor, it's just like, it's just unrealistic. And it's just one of those things that I think needs to change in general. And getting females in the gym, I think there's a huge movement right now, at least in CrossFit. It's like, you know, women who lift, like stronger, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I think it's moving in a good spot, but yeah, there's no way that, you know, doing a couple weeks in the gym is going to drastically change like what you look like. So, but I mean, again, something that we hear all the time. So cool. Anything else to add on that one?
No, I'm with you on it. Cool. I would say get in the gym, get your work in, be consistent, and don't be afraid to add loads. As long as you're strategic and smart, we'll be good to go.
For sure. Cool. All right. Next one is intermittent fasting is great for weight loss. Okay. So yeah, I get this question a good amount from, you know, people who reach out to me as well. Like, do they need to intermittent fast to lose weight? And again, my answer is no. Intermittent fasting can be an effective weight loss strategy just because if you're eating in a certain time window, it might delay the total amount of calories or reduce the total amount of calories that you're eating in a day. However, you know, for most of the research, people still manage to pack in a ton of calories like in that 8-hour window. And even if you don't eat until like, you know, a lot of people do like a 12 to 8, right? They'll do an 8-hour window. they'll eat like enough calories in that 8 hour window to be, that doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be in a caloric deficit in order to lose weight. So, I don't think like it can be helpful for some people, but it's 100% not required to lose weight. And I also think that for a majority of people, it's not the most effective way to lose weight. Because again, you're just shutting off, like, I find it like you're just shutting off your metabolism for those like 16 hours that you're not eating. And I don't think it's the most effective. But there are some potential, like if you're doing it for other reasons than weight loss, right? There's been a lot of research in regards to fasting recently, like whether, it gives your body like a reset, right? It gives your digestive tract a reset. It allows like a lot of the cells in your, digestive tract to actually heal, as opposed to like when you're eating all the time. So there might be some potential benefits to intermittent fasting, but it's 100% not necessary to lose weight. And it's more of a personal preference thing. If you think it helps you, if you think it helps reduce the amount of daily calories that you're consuming, then great, we can find a way to program that. If it's something that you don't want to do, then great, we can still achieve weight loss without that. So does that make sense?
One of the things that I actually do is I don't necessarily intermittent fast, but I guess I restrictive eat. I eat one portion in the morning, but it basically covers breakfast, lunch, and a snack, and then I eat one portion again in the evening, and it covers another snack and dinner and a smoothie. It's just all schedule based.
Exactly.
It could be something that may help people because my schedule is quite demanding throughout the days, and I know a lot of other people's are. But I am, like Pete said about fitting all the food in. I'm actually fitting 5 or 6 meals into 2 meals.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to, right? You need to look at lifestyle factors. You need to look at what works for you, and that is the most effective. So, like, again, when people come to me, they always say, "Oh, what's the most effective diet?" Right? It's whichever one you can follow, whichever diet is going to work with your schedule, whichever diet is going to work for you. So, yeah. Again, don't need to intermittent fast. Okay. Next question for Gary is going to be whether when you're a younger athlete, so a youth athlete, if lifting weights is bad for you, if it stunts your growth, right? I know a lot of people have heard that, like you need to wait until you're X years old until you start lifting, otherwise it can impact your growth or something like that. How do you respond there?
I'll tell you a really cool story. I was doing my first ever Olympic weightlifting cert, USAW cert, and we had to go. There was 20 of us or so, and the coach goes, "Okay, I'm going to bring in a demonstrator." And we thought, whoa, okay, here comes an Olympic athlete. Like this person's probably going to whip 300 pounds over their head, whatever. The demonstrator was 7 years old.
Nice.
He was 7 years old. I couldn't believe it at the time because at the time I was kind of thinking kids don't really have to lift yet. I heard all the things about stunting your growth. Man, this little guy did these lifts better than any one of us ever could. And it's an important thing to note. Kids could basically start training when they start walking and moving to a certain degree. The most important thing to know is when they're training at that age, when they're basically training a pre-puberty age, we're training their central nervous system, right? We're training their circuits. We're training their mind to muscle connection. It's like as if they started riding a bike. So when they do that at a young age, it works out extremely well because then they don't forget it. And then as they move into it when they get older, all their form, their ranges of motion usually tend to stay. But you have to remember that's what you're training. Their body's not ready to grow or necessarily put on mass yet. And it's not even to the point where you can, of course, you're not going to load them up with a ton of weight, but you don't want to look to that, to them gaining some kind of muscle mass or training to get a little bit bigger. No, we're training them like they're going to ride a bike. We're training the patterns over the size and the strength.
I love that perspective, and that's actually something I've never really thought about. Because I read a bunch of studies surrounding that as well, and they found that, yes, like training does not stunt your growth in any way. But I love that idea as far as like, because kids are so malleable at that age, like they're constantly learning, so they're picking up stuff earlier. It's also the fact that they're extremely flexible at that age too, which is like we know is so important for Olympic lifting, powerlifting, stuff like that. So yeah, if you can train like how to that age, like yeah, I could see that being like pretty invaluable. And just yeah, like you said, the mind muscle connection. So yeah, I don't think and I think a lot of people are doing this now, right? Like there's CrossFit kids at my gym, there's CrossFit kids everywhere. I know there's other, I've seen kids doing like the American Ninja Warrior, those courses. Like I think a lot of kids are getting into training a little bit more. So super cool to see.
Think about when we watch a kid or a toddler do a full depth squat. We all I get jealous thinking,
Yeah,
my God. And then they can sit there for hours. I mean,
it's
and it's
amazing. It's the perfect form.
incredible. It's impeccable.
Dude, yeah, it's I say it all the time because we have like a couple nieces, 2 and 3 years old, stuff like that, and I see them in a squat and it's just unbelievable. I'm like, damn, dude, I wish I could squat like that still.
It'll take me literally a year to try and do that. I squat down like that for a minute and my hips
Dude,
feel like they're gonna blow
oh,
out.
exactly. Um, cool, awesome. I love that. I really love that answer, and that makes so much sense. Okay, next one, nutrition. You need to, same thing, it's going to be a weight loss question, but you need to cut carbohydrates to lose weight. And this is one that I want to touch on because well, I hate the keto diet so much, like those low carb diets, like with a passion. Just because I don't think they're done correctly. I think that leads like eating that amount of fat and stuff like that. I don't think it's healthy long term. That's my perspective there. But the reason I want to talk about like the science behind why a low carbohydrate diet can help you lose weight, but why I don't think it's necessary and I don't think it's the right way to go. But basically, what happens is that a lot of the water that's stored in your body, like your water weight, so muscle glycogen and water, it's about a 1-to-1 kind of ratio in your muscles. And basically when you go low carb, you deplete your muscles of all of that muscle glycogen. Remember, this is your energy source, right? Your muscle glycogen is your energy source for when you're like, you have no more energy like in your body. Your liver is not making any kind of glucose at that point or glycogen at that point. So if you don't have that muscle glycogen in your body, number one, you're going to be feeling lethargic. You're going to be feeling tired. And this, I'm not just talking about for workouts. I'm just talking about for life, right? Yes, there is that whole idea about ketosis and all that stuff, how you can convert that to energy. Again, we can get into that maybe in a future episode, but we'll keep it fairly simple here. But basically what's happening is when you're depleting your muscles from all that muscle glycogen, right, because you're depleting all the carbs from your diet, you're also pulling all of that water out. And that's why people see that dramatic weight loss, right? They go low carb for a couple weeks and they step on the scale and, oh shit, like I'm down 10 pounds, right? But then guess what happens? They're just pretty much plateaued from there. So they've just dropped to that weight. They lost a bunch of water weight. No big deal. If they're not still getting into a caloric deficit, then it doesn't matter. It's not going to be effective for weight loss. And then as soon as they have any carbohydrates, their muscles are going to replete, get all that muscle glycogen back, get all that water back, and they're going to think that they've gained all this weight. So, if you need to do something like if you're on crunch time and you have like a beach trip that you want to try and look shredded for or something like that, maybe going low carb makes sense there. But in most cases, like, again, my philosophy, it's around slow, steady, sustained weight loss. And, going low carb is not the way to go. I just don't think you feel good for a lot of people. Again, there are, some circumstances where it might work for people. But I think you want to have energy throughout the day. You want to feel good throughout the day. You're less inclined to want to work out when you're low carb. You're less inclined to want to do anything at that point. So, my personal perspective, just really not the way to go.
Pete, we can dive into, I really do, because even to build value for myself in regards to keto and the idea of optimizing fat as an energy source, right? That's a whole other topic. But I think what you said is pretty fantastic. And even the one thing that I want to ask is, do you relate carb intake to activity level? Will you gauge that too? Like if a person is going to be highly active in the next 3 to 4 hours, will you plan a meal and say, hey, that's cool, you can have a lot of this because you're going to burn a lot of this up?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm a huge fan of like nutrient timing. Like I think it's incredibly important. So, but again, if your goal is weight loss, then yes, we might program your carbs for a specific time of the day, like before your workouts. But it's more related to total calories than carbohydrates in of themselves, right? So
Hmm.
yes, carbohydrates affect energy, but if we are shrinking your carbohydrates, we're probably also shrinking your fat in order to get you into a caloric deficit. I'm not just pulling your carbohydrates out, for no reason or just ambivalently just because you think carbs is the way to lose weight, you know?
Amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think that's worth the conversation. Next time we can get into ketosis, we can get into being a fat adapted athlete. So for these athletes who are doing endurance races, triathlons, right? Being fat adapted is actually important because your muscle glycogen, like your amount of glycogen that your body has, your energy stores, is only about an hour. So after that, unless you are supplementing with a Gatorade or a glucose packet or something like that, then your body will need to start changes its energy pathways, and it will need to start breaking down fat for energy. So there is applications for those types of athletes in order to be fat adapted, and they've shown that their body is like if you train that way. So like it's important to maybe train fasted for these people sometimes, so they can actually train those energy systems, so that way their body can actually break down fat more effectively than maybe other people. So it is super interesting. It's something that we get into at a further discussion for sure.
I think it
Cool.
builds high. It could build high value for the trainer, for a trainer especially, because the keto diet, the fads. I mean, there's definitely clients are going to come in and just be like, "Hey, what do you think of the keto diet?" Or "What can you give me any information on this?" So to talk to someone like you about it would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. For sure. Yeah, that's a great idea. We can definitely get into that and why I don't love it. um, Next one for you, Gary. So we're doing pretty good on time. We'll definitely get through this. So this one is around training around injuries, right? So should you still train? Should you focus on recovery? How should you train? That kind of stuff.
I think there's a lot of different factors that come into play. Depending on where the person is at and what they want to do, you're most likely not going to focus on recovery. You're going to focus on certain movements, and you're going to gauge pain and where they have it and where they don't have it. Let's say someone has some problems on a squat. A cool example for us, if they have problems in the knees, problems in the low back, oh, I don't like doing squats. We actually have this leg press piece that has open hips, so you're not locked into it like a traditional 45-degree old school leg press.
Yeah.
So it's basically like these people are doing a squat, but they're laying on their back and they're fully supported by something. So now we're giving them that movement pattern without any kind of pain, and they feel safe and effective, and it isolates the quads, maybe the glutes, certain areas that they want to feel in the squat itself.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Is there's always a way to learn how to train it and to learn how to move appropriately. Yeah, because I was the same way. Like a couple of years ago, I literally could not do a body weight lunge because my knees just hurt so bad every time I would get in that position. And I had to basically for like a year, I had to retrain like that movement pattern. I had to use bands. I had to do all these different stretches and stuff like that. But eventually, I was able to get through it. So I love that this is not pushing through the pain. This is finding a way to strengthen those muscles so you have less pain and eventually pain free, but you're still able to actually train those muscles. I think that's like incredibly important.
And it's cool too. It really builds, instead of there being any kind of barrier. I have an example with a man years ago. When he first came into the gym, he could barely walk because of sciatic.
Yeah.
And as we progressed into things, of course the doctors were like, no lunges, no squats, no
Yeah.
this. And at the time you want to listen, but then I started to think, well, no, this man he walks upstairs, so he does some variation of a lunge. He's going to sit in a chair. So
And you
as I,
have life.
yeah, exactly. So as I started doing that, doing the movements, he started getting better. His movement started getting better. He was walking, he was standing up taller, and I'm thinking, shit, I'm actually like, is this okay? I got this guy deadlifting and whatnot, but it just spoke for itself. I would, coming back to the barrier component, I would check in with him. I said, hey, gee, is this good? Where's the pain? Can you do it? Are you cool? And we would figure out adjustments if we needed to regress it, if we needed to progress it. It was a relationship. There wasn't just trainer says, client does.
Yeah.
And it built our value together. You know, we were sending each other stuff back and forth. He was so excited about being able to do a lunge. It was just a fantastic moment. Had I listened to the doctors, I don't know that that value would have been built or we would have progressed as far. And I'm not talking bad on the doctors, of course,
No, I
but
deal with the same stuff, dude.
you know, it's just like, you know, you can't do this, but then you think, well, wait, man, if this guy's going to walk up steps, he's going to do this, or if he's going to sit down, he's going to do that.
Yeah, I think there's always a way to navigate that stuff, right? I think, you know, that's what I think in a lot of ways, that's the way the doctors were trained. They have to protect themselves, like legally, like they have to tell you these kind of things. But I think you can heal a lot of things through movement and nutrition. So, you know, it's kind of getting back to maybe some of that Western medicine stuff, traditional medicine, all that kind of stuff. But you know, I do think like if you can find a way to do it pain-free and strengthen those muscles, it can be extremely safe and effective. So cool. That's awesome. Okay. Last question that we came up with, and then we will hit those questions from the audience, which again, we really appreciate you guys sending those in. We will try to have some kind of, before our next podcast, like some kind of question and answer thing again, just because I think this worked out really well. So that's awesome. Last one that I thought of personally was because I was a swimmer in college, and something that we did all the time was like carbo load, right? The big carb load before a big race or you know, a big competition, and whether that's really necessary. And I'm going to go with no, no, it's not really necessary for a lot of people, right? It really depends on what you're doing, right? The first thing is that instead of just doing like that all out carb load the night before, what's been proven to be far more effective is just upping your carbs about a week before the event, right? So for example, if I'm, you know, I have like I'm talking like, again, we'll get into the specifics of when you actually need to carb load and not. It kind of depends on what exactly you're doing. So if your event is going longer than an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe at that point it's worth to, you know, up that carb intake. But for like a routine, like swim meet, when you're swimming like, you know, a couple races throughout the day, it's probably not completely necessary. Maybe for some of the endurance, like the long distance swimmers, stuff like that. But it's been shown to be far more effective to just up your carbs throughout the week, right? So like I said, if I eat 300 carbs a day on average, maybe the first 3 days, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if my event was on Saturday, my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I go up to 400 grams of carbs a day. Then maybe the last 2 days, so like the Thursday, Friday, I bump it up to 500 grams of carbs a day. And then at that point, I'm sufficiently loaded, right? The whole point of the carb load is to make sure your muscle glycogen levels are as optimized as possible. And that normally takes about 24 to 48 hours anyway. So doing that carb load the day before, you know, it's going to help maybe a little bit in certain circumstances, but it's much better to just kind of load appropriately the week before. And as long as it's also coinciding with a taper off from your training, right? So if you're carb loading, but you're still kicking your ass in the gym, you're not giving your muscles the time, not just, you know, it's muscles all over your body store glycogen, but you need to give them time to actually, you know, regenerate that glycogen, as opposed to if you're constantly working hard, you're going to still be burning through it. So again, you need to know the right way to do it effectively, and how to do it, yeah, just appropriately. But let's talk about times when you actually need to carb load. Like I said, for most situations, carb load 100% is not necessary. But again, if you are someone who does marathons, triathlons, Ironmans, you know, stuff like that, yes, then it can be extremely effective. If you want, you know, optimal performance, it can be really effective to get in those extra carbohydrates. Does that make sense?
You nailed that one, bro. I was listening. I was into it. That's the old runner thing of eating a big bowl of pasta the night before the race type deal. And I've heard that many times. I've experimented myself for before CrossFit event days and items like that. So I agree. I do agree. I agree in knowing what I know naively, but from a common sense standpoint, it just sounds better and more structured to do it in a step-by-step basis rather than maybe slamming down 2 big dishes of pasta that night before. You don't even know how that's going to sit.
Exactly. That's going to get to. If it's not something that you're, number one, if it's not something that you're used to eating, and then all, like when you talk about pasta party, you're getting in like maybe you're eating the lasagna and the manicotti, like you're getting a ton of cheese and fat. Like
Exactly.
you're not sure how this is going to sit in your body, and maybe you're eating an extra 2,000, 3,000 calories that night. Like you might feel like crap in the morning eating all that food.
Yeah.
You know, smart way and a dumb way to kind of go about some of this stuff. But again, in a lot of cases, it's probably not necessary anyway. So cool. So awesome. Let's get to the audience questions. So I'm going to read off who they are from, and then if it's nutrition related, I'll shoot an answer. If it's fitness related, Gary will shoot an answer. Okay, cool. I think this is okay. Yeah, this one's a good one for you, Gary. So this is from Luke Strothenke. I don't know if you remember him from New Paltz.
I wanted to give a shout out, my friend. Yeah, it's been a long time, but thank you. I'm very, very glad you tuned in to these two guys here. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, so from Luke Stro, he goes, what warm-up routines can you do to kind of bulletproof your joints? So, flexibility. Or he said, or am I just doomed with my genetics?
Definitely not doomed with the genetics. The genetics might put you at a disadvantage or advantage at certain moments, but I think it's important to think about your target areas. Me, no matter what, I go to the ankles, the hips, and the shoulder. Basically, the ball and socket joint areas, the ones that are extremely mobile. And I will make sure, whether it's myself or it's my clients, that I touch on those areas, maybe all 3 of them, at least one of them, probably 2 of them during every warm-up session. For something like the shoulders, it could be literally moving it at every angle. Circle it forward, circle it backward, come from the side, do a fly, up and down like this, just to get it moving, because we're stuck. A lot of times now, I mean, you and I are doing it. Everybody's sitting, texting, everything's pulled forward. So I've had people just say, literally from doing this with their body weight, they'll say, this burns, but it actually feels so good. So I thought, okay, we're going to keep trying it. Going to the hips, I like a half kneeling stretch. I like the 90-90 drill. You can just look that one up, YouTube. That one has been fantastic for me in general, because I do have a little bit of problems with my hips.
Yep.
And just basically trying to sit. I've been experimenting with this lately. Sit in what we were talking about before, that toddler squat. How low can you sit down in a squat with your heels down? You don't want to look like a catcher. Make sure your heels are down. And it's okay if your back's bowed a little bit, but just sit there. And you'll probably feel in the internal portion of the hips a burn and a pull, and try to manage that as much as you can, but experiment with it. And the ankles, I'll do variations of lunges. I'll do variations of just a single leg balancing component, whether it be my body weight, whether it be holding on to some kind of weight, and we'll go through it. You just basically want to make sure that they move from different angles. It doesn't have to be every angle. And that they're primed to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, I like figure out the target areas that you want to work on, and then go from there. But Luke, if you want to like elaborate a little bit further on that one, and give us some ideas on where you're feeling tight or anything like that, then maybe we can give you some good exercises there. But I think that's great. And also, I've been trying to do 5 minutes a day in the squat. So
Good for you, bro.
Yeah, my hips are a little bit maybe more flexible than you, but I feel it tremendously in my ankles. So it shows me that, which makes sense based on my squat and stuff like that. So I feel a lot more pressure in my ankles and that burning in my ankles than I do in my hips. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's phenomenal. I think you should try to get into these positions. We think it's incredibly important. Just try these different positions each day. Like explore movement. Like when you're a kid again, it's important to do that kind of stuff.
And
cool.
Explore to a discomfort. Don't push yourself to some kind of extreme where there's sharper pain or a deeper level of pain. Just discomfort.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. Okay. So this is from Jiggy. He's a guy that used to work out at this Iron Tribe gym that I coached at. So thanks for sending that in, Jiggy. He said, can you give us a breakdown of the healthiest energy drinks? Are stuff like C4 and Celsius even good for you, or are they killing you? So, you know, most of these like pre-workouts and Celsius, C4, like they're basically just caffeinated beverages. For the most part, they're really not that much different than drinking a cup of coffee. They can give you some good energy for your workout. The whole functionality of caffeine, it actually doesn't. It's kind of a misconception. Is your symptoms of fatigue, right? So it actually blocks some receptors in your brain that are basically things that tell you that you're tired. So it basically blocks those adenosine receptors so that you don't feel tired. So it's not actually giving you energy. It's not allowing you to feel tired. So I always think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, for the most part, these drinks, they're really not, they're not going to be bad for you really. Like I would think about my caffeine consumption on a whole. So like my entire caffeine consumption throughout the day, the recommended daily allowance is 400 milligrams a day. And I would also think about my caffeine consumption when in the day that is. So caffeine, depending on your metabolism of caffeine, it changes from person to person, but it can have a half-life of about up to 8 or 9 hours in the body. So, really if you're drinking caffeinated beverages after 1 or 2 p.m., it might affect your ability to fall asleep at night. So I always, advise that something for people to think about. And then a lot of these drinks, like they might have some added sugars. They might have some, whether that's artificial sweeteners or actual, added sugars. It's just something to consider, right? So like if you're, again, it depends on your goals. If your goal is to lose weight, then maybe you want to cut out any added sugars in your diet or something like that. But, for the most part, I personally don't see anything wrong with these types of beverages. If, you talk about a breakdown for the healthiest types of energy drinks, again, we'll save that for a future session. We can get into some maybe of the best types of supplements. I know we kind of touched on that one time, but we can get some questions there and I can give a more concrete answer. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about those too much. Okay, next one. This is from JM Pierre. So this one is a caloric deficit the only way to lose weight, fact or fiction? So I'll touch on this one again. The caloric deficit, yes, a caloric deficit is necessary to lose weight. However, you can get into a caloric deficit in different ways, right? So you do not just need to get into a caloric deficit by lowering your calories that you're eating, right? The other option is you could increase your caloric burn or your output, right? So you could train more, you could do more stuff. So, and it really doesn't take that much. If you're trying to gain weight, you add a couple, 250 calories to your diet each day. If you're trying to lose weight, that's all you need to take out is about 250 calories, and you can start seeing some weight loss. So, yes, a caloric deficit is necessary to lose weight, but you can determine how you want to get there. So if you still want to be eating a lot of food, then, you can look at eating more nutrient-dense, less caloric foods, or you can up your level of training or movement in general, right? You can add a after breakfast walk and an after dinner walk, and that'll give you some extra movement. That might free up, about 200 calories throughout your day. So, find a way that it works for you. But yes, mathematically, you need to be consuming less than you're burning in order to lose weight. That's the only way that comes down to like the laws of physics, right? Conservation of energy there.
That's
So
a cool one. That's a cool one about working out, though, Pete. I mean, that's cool to be like, well, if I want to eat more, let me intensify a little more. Let me work a little harder. Simple
yeah.
point. I like that.
So I'll let you give your the rest of these are kind of nutrition related, so I'll let you touch on the next one, and then I'll fill in if I need to with anything. So this
For
one's
sure.
from Bon. I don't know if he was swimming. I think he was probably swimming at the time that
I know
you remember.
Con man very well. Yes.
Yeah,
How can I
exactly.
can never forget. Can never forget.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome guy. Awesome guy. So Bobby Kahn, he says, thanks for sending your question. He says, should your intake of protein be relative to your body weight? And then he gives an example of, basically how much protein should you be eating if you're trying to slim down versus build muscle. So do you want to talk about any of that?
100%. I would love to. And first, I want to give a thank you to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, thank you, Jeffrey Pierre, for listening. He's a colleague out here. Much appreciated. I know we both do. But comment, yes, the protein, the book will say anywhere from zero point 0.8. Some all go all the way up to 2, basically double your body weight if you are working that hard. I'm somewhere around there. I always say you need at least 1 gram to even 1.5 grams. I did see some very, very good results in myself when I was eating an insane amount of protein, and I did even get bigger. I think the bigger portion was more related to the carb intake because I was literally just eating everything. But it also goes back to this study that really stuck with me. They took a group of men and a group of women and they just fed them protein. And these people trained rather hard. And they literally, the more protein that they were eating with a consistent regimen of training, these people begin to get leaner and leaner and leaner. So I think it's a major factor. I think in regards to what you should be doing, I think you have to find your range. And we found one right there. You can try the 1 to the 2 and work that way and see what works out very, very well for you. And remember what your goals are. If you want to slim down, see what you need to do to slim down. If you want to get bigger, see what you need to do, see what you need to add to get bigger and put on size. I think the other thing is, Pete can probably answer this better, is the idea of basically with any of the organs, what may be going on if we're eating too much protein, and is it wasted or is it taxing a particular organ?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. Only other thing I want to add there is that a lot of people kind of get it mixed up, and it makes sense why, but you actually want to eat more protein when you're trying to lose weight. And Gary kind of, got to it through the study, or he knows that from experience and seeing it. But the reason for that is, you want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible when you're in weight loss, right? Because when we talk about weight loss, what we really mean is fat loss, right? Because in a traditional caloric deficit, if you're not eating enough protein, you're actually going to lose, because how does your body store food, or how does your body store energy? It can either store it as muscles or it can store it as fat, right? So, you really want to think about if we are going to be losing fat primarily, if we are taking in enough protein, if we are taking in enough amino acids, our body says, great, thank you, I'm glad I have all these amino acids, I'm glad I have this protein. I don't need to break down your muscle to get energy. I can now break down your fat, and that's what we want. So we actually want to up the protein intake when you're in a caloric deficit, so that way you're preserving as much lean muscle mass as possible. And that's a huge thing. On the other side of things, when you're trying to build muscle, when you're eating in a caloric surplus, right? So we're talking about you're eating more than you're burning, and in order to build muscle, right? Again, same kind of thing. The goal is to build muscle, not fat in that scenario. But your body is getting enough nutrients at that point that you don't need to go bring your protein up to a crazy amount, because your body's you're not like breaking down your muscles because they're in a caloric deficit. So, you just need to be, at your maintenance for protein a little bit, and then you can bump up maybe the carbs and the fats to, hit your caloric surplus in whichever way that you're going to. But I always found that pretty interesting because, that wasn't intuitive to me until I, learned that through some of my courses and stuff like that. But it really makes sense. As far as does it tax like your organs or anything, you would have to be eating an absolute insane amount where it'd almost be impossible to do for it to have any kidney problems. That being said, if you have any this is whenever we talk about this on this podcast, number one, we're not giving any medical advice out there. Anything that we say, it's always best to consult with your healthcare provider. But if you have a pre-existing condition, then you need to take note of that yourself, right? If you have kidney problems, then yes, you might need to be on a low-protein diet because your kidneys aren't functioning appropriately. But for everyone who is functioning well, you would have to eat like to a point of protein where it's almost impossible to really have a negative effect. Like protein is we can get into protein in a future episode too, just because of all the benefits. But protein is very satiating. I mean, it helps you stay full for a longer period of time. It is the hardest macronutrient for your body to convert into fat, because of the fact that it contains like nitrogen, so the amino acids. Your body is not able to just simply take that and convert that to body fat. So like in the example, if you're eating in a caloric surplus, but you're getting that surplus from protein, you're not going to be getting, you're not going to be gaining a lot of extra body fat, which can be good as well. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about that. But, if you want any, Bobby, you can reach out to me if you need any advice as far as like the exact protein to kind of take in. But does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. You nailed it. I learned something from that. Comment. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very well.
Okay, last one, 5:58. We have 2 minutes. We're not getting to every single question, unfortunately, but the last one that I have on here is going to be, and I think it's a great one, it's is eating healthy expensive? So, Gary, why don't you touch on that?
It can be, right? It can be expensive. It can be expensive as we want it to be, as far as we choose to go with it. If you want a highly organic, let's say straight off the farm deal in regards to especially meat, I know that out here, that can be very, very expensive, but don't overwhelm it would be the advice that I would give. Think more along the lines of replacing and moving forward in a sustainable way, and eat this rather than that, rather than, oh God, if I can't just afford this, I'm just not going to eat this way. There's plenty of options. There are better options than others, but find something that's sustainable for you and progress it as you go. Make stops at your local farmer's market. Stay in the fresh food aisles no matter what grocery store you're at. I mean, we have a grocery store out here that's called Erewhon. It is supposedly the creme de la creme with all their food sources. Strictly organic, all certified, the whole shaboodle, all that. But you may look at your grocery bill when you come out of there and it'll be a couple $100. Not everybody can do that, but if they do have to go to the Ralph's, I'm just naming places that are out here, or the Trader Joe's, or whatever fits in your budget, you can still find items of better quality than maybe where you were at, or maybe down the middle aisles, the processed aisles, and all of that. Pete, you can take it from here.
I think that was great. First, I just want to note that because Bob Kahn just joined. So, Bobby, we just answered your question. So you might go back and look at it. But we just wanted to say that, if you do want some protein advice, you can definitely hit me up, Bobby. Feel free to do that. But yeah, as far as like, is eating healthy expensive? Yes, it can be. And I think it depends on what type of, life or situation that you're in. So I know that I eat a little bit more organic maybe than I could afford right out of college. So that's one thing. But eating healthy does not need to be expensive, right? And I think everyone can see that, I do not shop. I do not go to fast food often, but I'm shocked sometimes when I leave, the fast food restaurant and my bill is like $20. So I think there's a misconception that unhealthy food is cheap. I also think there's a misconception as far as healthy food is expensive, because guess what? You can find a way, if you need to maximize your budget, you can always find a way to do that. And, when I first moved down here with my buddy Steve Casalongo, we lived on about $40 a week. And I know this sounds crazy, but we took this to the extreme, right? So we would buy bags of dried beans and then soak them ourselves. You're getting a ton of nutrition from there, and it's cheap. It's so cheap. So beans, lentils, anything that's going to be like the seasonal fruits and vegetables, those are going to be incredibly cheap. If you can't afford organic, no problem. Maybe eventually you can. It's not a huge deal in a lot of situations. There's also times where, organic's doesn't have that much more of a benefit. So it looks like we only have 20 seconds left. So I'll kind of wrap this up as quickly as possible. But, that's pretty much the answer. It's kind of it depends on your situation, but it does not have to be expensive anyway. So